So we've now looked at the obligations and liabilities of the carrier and the shipper, but they're not the only parties involved. What about the subcontractors? Could they be sued by the shipper or the consignee? Could they invoke the same defences afforded to the original carrier and enjoy the same limits of liability? Tomitaka Fujita touches on these issues.
There are many people other than the carrier who are involved in the transport of goods. Although Rotterdam Rules regulates the contract of carriage, they also pay attention to people other than contract parties. The focus of my speech is these people. More specifically, I address the following three questions. Who, other than the carrier, is liable under the Rotterdam Rules? 2, whose acts or omissions are attributable to the carrier? And 3, who is entitled to a defense and limitation of liability under the Rotterdam Rules? A smart audience might say, aha, the answer to these questions must be performing parties. No. Don't be so quick. If it is, my speech doesn't take 25 minutes. Things are a little more complicated. Let me first take the first question. Who is liable under the convention? Traditional transport law conventions have focused on liability of the carrier as a contracting party. Hague Rule 1924, including Visby Amendment 1968, regulate only liability of the carrier. The recent international conventions, in contrast, extend their regulation to sub-carriers with no direct contractual relationship with the shipper. The United Nations Convention on Carriage of Goods by Sea, 1978, known as Hamburg Rules, imposes liability on the actual carrier on the same basis as the contracting carrier. Rotterdam Rules, consistent with this trend, moved even further. Let us first look at Article 1, Paragraph 6. It defines the term performing party as a person who performs or undertakes to perform any of carrier's responsibilities under a contract of carriage and acts either directly or indirectly at the carrier's request or under the carrier's supervision or control. This notion is broader than performing carrier or actual carrier used in previous international conventions, in the sense that it includes not only the sub-carrier who performs the actual carriage, but also other persons involved in the performance of carriage, such as stevedores or terminal operators.
An example of a maritime performing party would be terminal operators and stevedores. I spoke to Frans van Zolen from the Port of Rotterdam about the possible impact on the stevedores and terminal operators. So how would they be affected?
They need to be aware of the fact that the position of the stevedoring company might change. And in some countries, ports are also doing stevedoring activities. They call that a service port. So if a port is not only a landlord port, is not only renting out real estate, but is also doing the loading and unloading of vessels itself, and is a stevedore, it should study some aspects of the rules. I think that they don't need to be worried about the changes, because what the treaty does is codifying what is now already jurisprudence, but they have to be aware that it is now also taken into a convention and will be, in the end of the day, part of the national legislation.